because they're really the thing that unlocks the whole flow of it. So if you want to accomplish what God's put on your heart, you have to embrace the obstacles that prepare you through that. So probably somebody could just rewind a little bit and listen to that again. But it's very potent if you let it sink in. But how does that fit into the context of our conversation today, with people who have persevered? I guess perseverance is a good umbrella.
So perseverance is the thing, and when you see someone who has persevered, they had a vision, but they were willing to embrace the obstacles. Mm-hmm. That's why we say they had perseverance.
Exactly.
You can't have one or the other.
That's right.
It's not just suffering, obstacle. There had to be a bigger purpose in it, right?
Right.
That's why we talk about purpose in here. But that person also, too, didn't just have this big vision and poof, it magically happened.
Right.
There was struggle.
Yeah.
So when, Kevin, you think about perseverance, okay, who's someone that comes to mind? When I say perseverance, do you have a picture of somebody?
Well, I think a lot of times we think it's someone who suffered. And, even my wife and I have what I would consider persevered in the last decade and let God, we learned how to lay it down and let God take care of it. We follow Him rather than help Him across the street.
Right.
But not everybody, it's not all about that. It's not about suffering. It's more about enduring, following what God has for you, because those obstacles they're the things that propel you forward. I've got a picture. We doing okay on time?
Yeah, we got about a minute and a half.
I've got a picture on my I guess I had it on my wall until we moved, but I still have it. It's a picture that I took, but it's a stairway kind of going up between. It's got trees in the middle of the stairway. It's out in the woods, but the trees are in the middle of it, so they look like obstacles. But the way that I look at it is now, the reason I kept the picture, took it, is because those obstacles are things you can grab onto to help propel yourself forward. So that what looks like trees in the middle of the staircase or the ladder are actually another way to hold on.
It's like a handrail.
Exactly, but big trees in the middle. So we can, I guess we can come back and
we can definitely dive into
talk
the next.
more.
Sure, the next segment. I think the key thing to take away is today we're going to be talking about perseverance, and it's a kind of a twofold approach. We have to understand that there has to be a big vision. That's this purpose, what God's doing.
Right.
But a willingness to embrace those obstacles along the way, because they're going to come.
They are. You cannot accomplish your dream without them. And so it's a half-hearted attempt to just dream big and run from the obstacles. So.
Yeah. It's always encouraging to me to remember that every hero, every success, all these things, they had obstacles.
Absolutely.
So don't get discouraged when you face them.
Right.
Guys, you are listening and watching Wake Up Our Faith right here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Matt Ham and Kevin Adams with you every Wednesday, 1 to 3 p.m. This airs every Sunday, 12 to 2 on Wilmington's Big Talker 106.7 FM. welcome to Wake Up Our Faith, the show where passion, purpose, and dreaming big challenge common sense. We like to think of it as a conversation to shed light on the upside of upside down living. My name is Matt Ham, I'm co-host along with my good friend here, Kevin Adams. We are the co-founders of YouPrint, a faith and personal development organization here in Wilmington, North Carolina, helping people bridge the gap between Sundays, thrive in their gifts, and live the life of impact they were created for. This show streams live every Wednesday, 1 to 3 p.m. Appreciate you jumping on here, social media. Feel free to share it out, invite folks into the conversation. Also, too, want to recognize our corporate partners, one of those being Southern Bank, that is the Bank of Better Business, serving Eastern North Carolina since 1901 with specialized financial service. You can give them a call here in the Mayfair branch at 910-256-3657. We also want to recognize Fountain Financial Services and our good friend Chris Riley. They have been giving clients and families a better life for more than 20 years, and they're all about keeping promises over there. We certainly appreciate Chris. Chris is a good friend. Love the folks at Fountain. Feel free to give them a call, 910-256-8882. So, Kev, today, kind of topic is perseverance. And we kicked into the first segment with this idea of pausing for a second to recognize that perseverance is about having a big dream, having a big vision,
Right.
and then being willing to tackle the obstacles.
Yeah, it's kind of a cliche to just say dream big, right? But we have that in our opening line and tagline, and there's a reason for that. It's because we want to go below the surface. We want to understand the iceberg of a dream. We want to get below and look at what a dream really is and where does it come from and all the nuances, rather than just patting somebody on the back with small talk and saying, dream big. Hey, buddy, dream big.
Right.
I mean, what does that do? Maybe it's a moment of encouragement, but we want to really walk with people and help them understand, what does that look like? And guess what? It's not easy, but it's necessary. If you want to, you hear sales guys talk about, I don't want to leave any money on the table. Well, I don't want to leave any kind of spiritual currency on the table when this life is about being used and servicing, people. So we have to go all in. So let's look at what that looks like. And so anyway, dream big means something. It's not just a cliche.
Well, I think one of the points is we want to be able to say like, hey, we get this. This is what we're wrestling with, even as we're building this company.
Yes.
Even as we're diving into this radio show.
Right.
This show was a picture in your mind before it ever became a real thing.
Sure.
And it started in a place. There have been obstacles along the way.
Lots of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even in the midst of, whatever. So we're not trying to come off as inauthentic here.
Right.
The point is authenticity.
Right.
And that's kind of, we're diving into that.
Yeah, and we don't have all the answers, but we know that we have hearts that are going after it because we feel led. It's kind of like the virgins with the oil in the lamp. We keep putting oil in every day and just keep going after it. And we're seeing growth, and it's not always where we expect. Mm-hmm. And then things that we don't expect may happen and fall away. We don't get so emotionally attached to that stuff. We just say, yay, God, all right, that means something great. And you look at it that way, and you get into it. It's not about just being able to say that, like positive talk or whatever. It's about internalizing it, taking it in, and recognizing when this, or this happens, that we turn it back to what's good. And we focus, not just up here, but here, and lock it in. Okay, this is awesome. Something good is coming from this. And something does all the time.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, personally for me, this is something we've actually just walked through here recently. When you see something that doesn't go the way you expected it to, right? Now, we deal with this every day.
Right.
I mean, every day. If you live life, your expectations will not be met at some point in time during the day, right?
Right.
Whatever it is. It could be something simple, something big. When you have these expectations and they're not met, right, the challenge is to automatically focus on what's not happening that you expected. And so I, in my own life, had a situation where I had created this expectation. It didn't happen, and it started to derail the train.
Yeah.
And that's where you came back to me and you said, the difference between giving and expecting.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to expound upon that. That's something that you gave me in that moment, but I want it to come from you because it was real powerful.
Yeah, it's funny. This stuff just happens. But I think the thing that God put on my heart for you, and it's something that we are helping other people understand, is even at Uprint, we're working to build our reputation with people. We're going after excellence, and we'll come to that in a few minutes. But we're working to build our reputation with people rather than building expectations of them. And what most people do is they put expectations on people. It's kind of like, if I do this, then I expect you to do that. Well, that's fine in a business model. So we have some of that going on. If we provide a service, we do expect payment. But we're also functioning like a church, and that's where personal relationships really have a greater effect when you just give. Jesus said it's better to give than receive. Well, that really means something. So what we're doing here is we're trying to help people learn to go from a place of joy, from a place of rest, from creativity, not competitiveness, not having anything expected in return. So in a way, you're building your reputation by tapping into Jesus' reputation, and you're carrying that out, and that's it. Anything that doesn't work right in that, you're okay if it fails. In other words, emotionally. Does this make sense? I guess. So the idea is, it doesn't mean you don't have a business model under it. It just means that your heart is focused on the good thing, the thing that you can do every day, rather than the thing that other people are not doing for you.
Yeah.
If you get into that, it'll kill your heart and your hope.
One of the things that you see in Scripture, and then we've talked about before, is the concept of manna. God gave His people manna in the desert, and if they hoarded it, it would rot.
Yeah.
And if they didn't collect it, they had to be actively collecting the manna.
That's right.
And one of the things that we do in our lives is we inadvertently focus on everybody else's manna. And the challenge is that there's this competitive thing, this comparative thing, that kills our creativity.
Yes.
And it kills God's Spirit in us when we start going, oh my gosh, His manna, He's got that manna,
Yeah.
Excellent people that have persevered, all of these icons that we see.
Right.
There's been a drive, I would argue, underneath that. So they saw someone and said, I'm going to drive to be excellent. But I don't believe that they were truly competitive or comparative. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's dangerous.
Well, and so let's talk about a someone who is competitive because that was his job.
Right.
If you're an attorney and you've got to win a case in the courtroom, you have to compete. If you're on the sports field or court or whatever, being competitive is good. All right. So we're not saying competitive is wrong. We're saying in personal relationships it has no place. You have to put that first above everything else. And if you do that, then you won't get caught up in what people aren't doing when you're ministering to them or loving on them or actually changing their lives. Businesses don't necessarily change people's lives. They take care of their needs. Their needs are met. But what we're doing is both. And so it's kind of new. We're kind of being a business and a church. So we get both sides of it. But I've got this quote from my wife earlier, sent me, about Michael Jordan, who is from here, a native of this soil,
Absolutely.
Which is pretty cool to be able to tell people. But I just wanted to read it, and I'm sure you've heard it many, many times. But this is important. This is talking about perseverance, lowering your expectations, and moving forward with what you're called to do, and then embracing the obstacles. Michael Jordan says, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeeded. Michael Jordan. So that's pretty powerful. I mean, it's not Abe Lincoln, right?
Right.
But it's kind of, this guy is the very best, and he's known as the best, and probably because he was a pioneer. It doesn't Other people could sing better than Elvis, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. But he was the first.
Yeah.
And he was the first person to make people look silly because he was so good at what he did. Michael Jordan was the first person to leap from the top of the key and make people look silly.
Yeah.
Other people can do it. So, but he had to persevere. And you do that by embracing the obstacles and understanding, how to let go of the things that get in the way.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge picture that we can all hold on to, and we'll certainly dive into that in the next segment and further unpack this idea of perseverance, because it's important for people to step into. Guys, you're listening to and watching Wake Up Our Faith. Matt Ham and Kevin Adams. Want to encourage you to check out the Portable Faith community at wakeupmyfaith.com during the break. We'll be back for more right after this. to Wake Up Our Faith, the show where passion, purpose, and dreaming big challenge common sense. We like to think of it as it's all good, man. You got both. It's like, which camera?
One of the things we've been talking about is dreaming big, which is in our tagline, and some of the texts that we've sent out this week in our Portable Faith community. And part of that is embracing the obstacles. There's a process. A dream is more than a dream, but there's a process that unlocks your gift set. So you have to kind of follow through that. And I called it an iceberg in our last segment. But a part of those obstacles are when things don't look the way you expect, and so it's about reducing your expectations of other people and raising them of what God is doing, and that's a constant theme through what we teach.
Right.
And there's different ways to say it, and sometimes it may seem redundant, but what we're doing is walking with people over and over and over and over again, almost like a spiritual chiropractic adjustment. So if it seems redundant, we just want to keep coming back to it over and with it, maybe from a slightly different view.
Yeah.
If you get up under the Eiffel Tower with your camera, you're gonna see a whole different tower than the postcard shot that you normally see. So I just wanted to preface this conversation with that.
Well, listen, man, you don't clean your toilet once. You have to continue to clean it.
That's right, and you don't read the Bible and say, I did it.
Right, it's done.
Yeah, it's a living organism that you take in every day, hopefully.
Man, faith isn't a mountain you climb. It's a journey that you engage in.
Right.
And so we have to keep coming back to these things.
That's right.
Because we need it.
Yeah,
I mean, good gracious, we need it. I mean, you see, like today we were talking about perseverance, and you brought up Michael Jordan.
Right.
I mean, here's a guy who literally is the greatest of all time when it comes to basketball, championships, leadership, or whatever. And you share this quote that he talks about his failures. He talks about his struggles.
Yes.
Not to mention his father's murder, leaving the game of basketball, coming back. Right. All that stuff, man. It creates this stress and these obstacles. But those who persevere, they navigate this stuff well.
They don't allow those things to become front and center. They embrace them by what I would call blurring the landscape. In other words, if you're traveling down a little path in the woods and things are jumping out at you, what's that designed to do? That is designed to distract you and get you unproductive and keep you from going forward.
Yeah.
So what we teach people to do, and even on our show here, is the idea is to encourage people to understand who they are, know what God's saying, clear the air, go forward with joy, and don't let anything distract you. So that's what this is all about. Well, how is unless they're what is it, a star for just famous for being famous?
Right.
There's a few of them now, but mostly.
Well, I was watching this documentary. We've talked about this. It's called The Defiant Ones. And for anybody that watches it, the language, just forgive that. But it's about the rap industry. And there was a powerful thing in there where Jimmy Iovine, the record producer, was in the studio with Bruce Springsteen. And Bruce Springsteen was relentless. He wanted excellence, right?
Yes.
And Iovine wanted to quit.
Right.
And his buddy, his lawyer friend, looked at him and said, "Stay in the saddle." And man, as it relates to our conversation right now, there's a thing about that, to stay in the saddle, to get to that excellence.
Right.
That's another thing God's given you recently, this idea of excellence. I want to poke on that a little bit.
Well, okay, so think of one of the big obstacles when it comes to being faithful in public is, that's a private thing. And we talked about this, I think maybe last show, but this weird stuff where, we want to keep it in private. And I get the whole thing. We don't want to force it on people because people have to come to it, and that's great. A great teacher asks questions, and the students come to it, and they learn and grow. So there's a tenderness in that, but you don't want to shy away from it and withhold truth. Who are you? That matters. But instead of, and my question this week in one of our texts was Jesus authentic or publicly appropriate? And I think it's a great question. So the text, I don't know if you mind reading it. I just have to keep putting my glasses on to see it.
I got it right here.
But
just got to bring it up.
There's another way than holding back. And so that text really says it well.
Yeah, the text is was Jesus authentic or publicly appropriate? Authentic faith isn't held captive to being appropriate before others. It's held captive to being excellent on their behalf.
That's right.
Instead of withholding the truth about your faith, be excellent because of it.
Yes.
So others will truly see the character of God in you.
That's it. You want people to see God's character in you, so you don't have to shy away from being excellent. I mean, from being faithful. You just have to let people see what faith is about. Mm-hmm. And it's about the pursuit of excellence, because God is the most excellent, and it's just all works together. So you don't have to be afraid and say, well, I don't, and shy away from what you believe. That's a lie.
Yeah.
It's not, that's not integrity. And we stuff God in a box, and instead what we need to do is we need to be excellent. And people will see His character through you.
Well, He's about excellence. He's about genius. He only created genius. And so we got to give Him credit and glory by the way we live.
That's right.
Instead of hiding from that.
Yes.
And the problem, I think, is that our small view of God, we put Him down here, like little tiny God on the table, instead of just letting Him be who He is and be excellent because of who He's called you to be.
Yeah, and so think of these things like in backing up, looking at what is wisdom? Is wisdom? Would you seek wisdom or financial security? Are you working for a dream, or are you working for comfort or security? And it's good to recalibrate over and over again by asking yourself those questions. Because if you're just working for security or comfort, then you're kind of wasting your existence, because you have something really special in you that people need. And it's all appointed at a time such as this. And all the details, if you walk through them, they're here right now. You're here. So you want to take that responsibility with honor and go after it and be excellent and do all you can, but not shy away from your beliefs. Think of the obstacle thing this way too, going back to that for just a second. Faith is like the Bible talks about it like a seed, right? And so what is so good about a seed? It's got the potential of life in it. But it compares it to a mountain. It says you can move a mountain. Well, what is a mountain? These obstacles. They're just big dead rocks. So, and it's funny, if you don't think they can move, just look at a video of Mount St. Helens from 1980. They move.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Absolutely. Well, I love the difference between kind of the seed idea and the mountain idea. One is life and potential, and it looks small.
That's right.
And that's the dream.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then the obstacle is that, boom, move the mountain.
So you can't go by this, and I'm pointing at my eyes.
And what you can see.
I forget. We're on radio, we're on camera. That's why you can't navigate by that. You have to navigate from the Spirit, through your heart. You have to feel it, and then it comes out through your hands. And you can use your eyes for that.
Yeah.
So
Kevin, we got about a minute left in this segment, and I want to recognize our corporate partners and make sure we appreciate them. Chris Hutchins with Guaranteed Rate has been in the mortgage business here in Wilmington for more than 20 years. If you're refinancing or purchasing a home, make sure you give Chris and his team a call, 910-344-0304. And also, Dr. Greg Veman at Seacoast Skin Surgery, right upstairs. I saw one of his office folks coming out when we were walking in, and it's like high five, part of the team. So that was cool. Thanks, Dr. Veman and his ministry, Everlasting Strength, 910-256-2100. I just want to make sure we appreciate and thank our partners for being a part of this. So the final segment of the show, we're going to be joined by one of our partners. And that is Russ Zimmerman with Physical Therapy Services of Wilmington.
Right on.
I want to bring Russ into this conversation about perseverance, his dream. I've known him for a while. I think it'll be great. It'll be a fantastic way to really tap into how this gets lived out.
Yeah, we're highlighting a sponsor, but we're also interviewing a friend for a segment and just see how he's living it out.
Yeah.
Be great. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Guys, we so appreciate you tuning in today. Thanks for jumping in on social media. We're going to get some of these comments and quotes. Appreciate you guys watching and sharing this out in your communities. This is Wake Up Our Faith. I want to encourage you to join us in the Portable Faith community every weekday morning for encouragement right to your device to help you wake up, freshen your perspective. Matt Ham, Kevin Adams will be back for more right after this. And welcome back to Wake Up Our Faith, the show where passion, purpose, and dreaming big challenge common sense. We like to think of it as a conversation to shed light on the upside of upside down living. My name is Matt Ham. With me every single week right here on the show is my good friend and co-host Kevin Adams.
All right.
Getting replugged, baby. Right in time, so it's all good. And we're super jazzed to be joined by Russ Zimmerman, Physical Therapy Services of Wilmington. Russ, what's happening, man?
Hey, glad to be here.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you being on. Russ and I grew up together, good friends, love what he's doing in the community. Tap into that in just a second. But want to make sure that we recognize the Honeycutt Group, one of our corporate partners. Honeycutt Group is a family-owned insurance brokerage company right here in Wilmington, more than 10 years in the business. Actually had lunch with Chad yesterday. Love what they're doing. Home, auto, any type of insurance you need, give them a call, 910-338-1773. And rather than talk about physical therapy services, I got you in the flesh, man.
Yeah, that's us.
They're glad to be here, man. So tell us a little bit about what you do, man. What's going on?
Well, I am a physical therapist, as you said. Our business, Physical Therapy Services, started in 1983 as a family business. My dad started the company. It's started out as kind of a one-man operation. Has grown to something really, really positive and busy. I certainly didn't grow up aspiring to be a physical therapist. I was around the office, but not observing patient care per se. Definitely kind of the maintenance guy, cutting grass, painting, and that sort of thing. But I wanted to play ball. That's how I met Matt. Playing baseball I think we met as maybe 10 years old, playing Little League together. And once that wasn't a realistic option, I had to kind of start thinking about where I saw myself. And what really kind of resonated with me was when I was out with my folks in the community, and people would approach my dad and talk about what a positive influence he's had on them. Big or small. It could be an athlete. It could be someone a little bit older, able to get down on the floor and play with their grandkids. But I'm like, it's really cool. So I kind of started to explore that avenue, and here I am.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, certainly love your family. I mean, like I said, we played Little League together, and that's super cool. But so, Kev, we've been talking about perseverance today as it relates to faith, following that big dream. What are your thoughts, as you bring Russ in here, this conversation with perseverance and stepping into that?
Well, look, we all have vocations, but that's kind of the fruit. That's kind of the extension of where everything's coming from. So, you just talked about your journey. It was just a nutshell version. But my question for you would be, obviously you're really good at what you're doing, and your heart's in it, and you're serving others through that. So I think that journey is real important. But maybe talk about some of the obstacles you've faced, if you want to. Just what you've overcome.
Well, you have to persevere throughout your life. I mean, school. It's a long, tons of school. Long
lots
night.
of school, man. I get stressed thinking about lots of school.
I mean,
that's
just
a huge amount
stressful times with school, passing tests, that sort of thing. But now, now that I've taken a more leadership role within the company, my faith may be tested more than ever. With the work. Now that people are coming to me for answers and that sort of thing, and managing people, and I'm pretty good at rehabbing a body part or whatever the people are walking the door with. But that really does test my faith, having to make decisions, and I pray that I make the right decisions, and that that I'm just leading people on the right way, because I know decisions that I make will affect several other people. So this is kind of a new period for me in the leadership role. So I'm growing in that aspect.
Well, it's kind of, you're doing it like on the fly too.
Yeah.
I mean, because you've got 3 kids.
Practice.
No manual.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, the thing is too is and then you bring in the whole conversation about, you have 3 kids, and you do that in the midst of the pressures of family life. I mean, it gets to be heavy. And it can get to be bearing,
Right.
And one of the things, that we're about at UPrenn, and why we do this show, and, why we walk with people, is to help keep hope in front of them.
Right.
And I know it was funny, man, so when we first started this thing out, you jumped in on this Portable Faith community, and certainly have been supporting this. And so I'm just curious to see, what are your thoughts on, how that's helped, and, what do you see, and, getting behind and all that kind of stuff? Because, that's important to the community to see that.
Sure. So, like you said, I wake up each morning and encouraged by the texts that I get. I observe perseverance in our patience, which is kind of a pretty awesome thing to see. So, people aren't coming to see me because they want to. They need to be there for an injury. And people, kind of have this expectation that, A, B, and C are going to happen, and then I'm back, running or whatever the case may be. But it never goes like that. And that's how kind of everything in life is. It doesn't quite work out the way that you think. But, back to the theme of perseverance, listening to you guys, there are going to be some, it's not going to follow a straight path. And it's nice to see people work through that. And then I see that, how people kind of battle through that, and take that with me.
Yeah, that's cool, good, man. Good insight, and it's a great context for it. My dad had hip replacement last year or earlier this year, and it took him like 8 months to get back to where we could take walks together and stuff. And so, man, when you're saying that, you're seeing the other side. You're the guy telling him, hey, it's going to be okay. And so that's really, what a great context, physical therapy, for seeing that this thing kind of zigzags. You have to stay the course. But you also have to have vision and look past, you know, like the all-time quarterback when you're 13 and the rest of the kids are 6, and they're just tackling you. And, you know.
So, I mean, a lot of times you just see what's right in front of you. You don't, like, exactly like you said, you don't see the big picture. You don't see the goal. Like, honestly, I just left the office. I have a brand new patient, total hip replacement, 2 weeks out. And he's like, I really thought I'd be further along than I am right now. You know, he's on a cane, and I'm like, all right, here's the process, you know. So, I mean, that can be applied to everything.
What a hate process, man. Gosh.
Well, what we don't want to do here is we don't want to be a marketing brochure. Correct. We want to be flesh and blood, soul, spirit, and honest, and just live this stuff out. But we got to do it together.
Correct.
So we need to open up and share what we believe, not preaching at people necessarily, unless you're a preacher, but through our work. So my question for you in that context is, and you may have already answered it, but what does Russ get up every morning to experience? What do you want to experience, like your dream day?
Personally?
Yeah, man. Aside from, you know, the fun stuff that we all do on vacation, you know, but every day for you.
Yeah. Well, I want to, you know, I want to be a light that people see. The thing that always kind of, the message that sticks with me that I get from it is I want to be a positive light. So I want people to see how I treat people, not unrelated to patient care. I want to see how I treat my family, my friends, my neighbors, strangers. I want people to see how I treat people with generosity and a listening ear and things like that. So if I can relay that to other people that don't know me, then perfect.
What I hear you saying is, I'm going to be the same guy at 3 o'clock in the morning as I am at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm going to be the same guy before Kings as I am before homeless people. Correct. And that sounds like what you're about.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we try to do that. I mean, it is difficult, obviously, because we're selfish and sinful and that sort of thing. But that is what I want people to, when they see me, I want to, you know, to see, you know, the good.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Well, we got about a minute left in the segment here, and I'll say this, man, as a lifetime friend, this dude is authentic, right? And that's why he's here. That's why he's a part of this. That's why we partner with people. It's this authentic people that are living this out every day without the pretension of it or the put-onness. So, I mean, we appreciate that, dude.
Yep. And I want to thank you guys because, you know, what I can do some things, but you guys are, you know, counselors to me and to so many others, and you're doing fantastic work. Yeah, dude. It's awesome.
Listen, man, thank you, bro. Yep. We certainly appreciate it. Want to remind our listeners here, Physical Therapy Services of Wilmington, new offices up near Porter's Neck. Make sure you give these guys a call. I tell you what, they're the best in the biz. 100 years of experience, family owned since '83, back since Jordan began to fly. And so, talked about Jordan earlier in the show. You guys have to check that out. So, give them a call, 910-763-8286. But Russ, man, thanks for being here, bro.
Yeah,
making time in your day. Love the insight. That was super good. Kev, any closing thoughts, man? We got, 20 seconds?
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, man, and come back sometime.
Thanks for having me.
Make it happen, guys. Well, listen, we'll be back with another hour of Wake Up Our Faith, joined by Macy Cole, right here on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7 FM. to Wake Up Our Faith, the show where passion, purpose, dreaming big, challenge common sense. We like to think of it as a conversation to shed light on the upside of upside down living. We're kicking off a second hour here in the Standard Glass Studios at Howell Creek Landing, Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7 FM, airing every Wednesday on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter from 1 to 3 p.m. Every Sunday on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7 FM from 12 to 2. Matt Ham, Kevin Adams, and as always, they're actually now it's getting fresh. We're joined by Macy Cole.
She's got her casual. This is Macy. If you don't know her, you probably do, but if you don't, this is Macy. She is very calming and just brings a great dynamic to it. So thanks for running with us. We appreciate you very much.
Huge honor.
It's good. Hey, real quick before we kick off, Axis was recognized. Was it Star News?
Yes.
All right, as top yoga shop,
Yes.
and we got Brother Troy.
Yes.
Tell people about this.
Yeah.
So this is actually a really huge deal. We're about a year and a half in, and somehow we got selected on Star News to be one of the top yoga studios in the community, and you can vote daily on that. So if you're interested and you like what we do, please vote for us. And then even bigger than that, there's probably 500 million personal trainers in the Wilmington area. And
Literally.
yeah, literally.
Everybody.
Everyone. And my husband, Troy Cole, who is the co-owner of Axis Yoga Studio, got selected as one of the top trainers. So I could sound really biased, but I am very hard on his skill set. And I will say from a very unbiased standpoint, he is better, the absolute best, I would say, in the world. And that's probably going to diminish what I'm saying by saying that. But I really mean it. No one knows the body as good as him.
Yep.
And he lives out a life of Christ in the way that he coaches, in the way that he lives, and the way that he helps people heal. So
Yeah.
vote for him.
Shout out to Troy. Yeah, vote for sure.
Well, and we've been saying that, and we're outsiders in a sense. I mean, you guys are married and whatnot, so even if you were biased, which you're not, we know this guy, and he is the best, and God's bringing together the best.
Right.
And so just by default, we know that. But vote for him. One more time, how do you vote for him?
So you'll go to Star News online, and it'll have, like, in the top corner, nominated businesses and people. You'll click on that. You have to create a really simple profile, and then it'll scroll down to the bottom, and you guys can select sports, and then all of that information is under yoga and personal trainers. So check it out.
Yeah.
Holly did earlier, so I need to do it.
Yeah, I did it yesterday, and we shared it to our Facebook page. So for
Great.
those watching the live stream, make sure you go to the Facebook page and vote it up. So
Okay. What's
yeah.
on the subject today?
We were talking in the first segment about perseverance, and I know that we're transitioning now. Macy has some stuff on her heart. So Macy, go ahead. What are we feeling today? Let's download the vibe.
First of all, I'm just trying to take in how good this feels. I feel like I'm going to tear up with how exciting this is to be with you guys today. This is so good. Thank you guys for listening, because it's really fun. And even if you weren't listening, I think we'd still do this. So I guess it's a little better.
This is
that
it is.
That's the
It's
truth.
a conversation.
We'd be sitting in the room somewhere just
Right.
like, ooh, let's ponder.
Yeah, ponder all these
Yeah.
wonderful things. But so we're letting people into the conversation because there's a lot of cool stuff here.
Right.
Absolutely.
3 different hearts and sets of wisdom and skills, and so bringing it together is fun.
It is.
And it's very calming. And I think Matt and I talked about this last week. Just how it felt when you came in here. It's totally different. What we do together is awesome. But when you come in here, it brings a whole nother set of just wonderful. I don't know how to describe it. So anyway, I'm gonna let you talk. But thank you. So what's on your heart? Carried over from last week.
Perfect.
Et cetera.
Well, last week we talked about lion and lamb, and that's such a powerful thing for us to understand when to be what. And what we realize is that whether you're being the lion or the lamb, behind those two things has got to be love, because that's who God is. And so when we're leading with the lion, we lead with the lion. The lamb is right behind us, and the foundation of those two things is love. And then when we're leading as the lamb, right behind that is the lion, which is the boundary setter. And again, there's still love there. So it's about when to step in and rebuke, and when to listen and be kind to one another. So going off of that, this week we'll talk about justice and mercy, and the way that that plays out throughout the Bible, and the way that Christ lived his life between those two balances, and really talking about how we have a merciful God who is also just. And I think it's important for us to really understand the difference in those two things in the same way that we understand the difference between lion and lamb.
The thing that I feel in this thing is there's a juxtaposition, is that the right word? A juxtaposition in Christ of this polarity that we bounce between of justice and mercy, you know, and a lion and lamb.
Juxtaposition.
Right. I think that it's powerful for us to pause and really understand the duality of our God. And I think a lot of times we fall into one camp. We talk about the pendulum swinging back and forth. It's like, you know, exhausting. Right. And so that's powerful to me to really embrace the both and component of this.
So what does that look like?
Exactly. Well, one of the biggest things to realize is we all have masculine and feminine characteristics. And so when Kevin talks about being the bride of Christ, and Kevin is a man and he's a husband, what he's saying and talking about is the characteristics of what a bride looks like, that feminine energy. And the masculine energy is the protector. It is the, in yoga terms, the solar energy. It's the sun. It's the one that's action-oriented and full of passion and vigor and will and purpose. And so when we think about the husband, it's exciting that Christ is the one taking charge. We want him to be the one making the decisions. So we want him to be, you know, the disciplinary in a sense, because he knows truth. And so we get to be the wife. We get to be the lunar energy, the more nurturing energy, the restful energy. Just like when the moon comes out, we sleep and we dream, and kind of that gentler, more kind aspect within ourselves. And so when we talk about justice and mercy, it's very similar to that. You know, justice is that masculine energy. We must do what is correct and what is right and what is lawful, because there is laws to the universe, and that's how nature is guided. But we also have to be very open to mercy, and we have to be willing to forgive and to love at all costs. And again, the foundation of justice and mercy must be love. If we are being just to be cruel and get even, then we are not coming from a space of love, and that is not the justice that Christ is or that God teaches us to be. And so we can only be rightfully just if we have love at the foundation, and we can rightfully be merciful as well. Because if you're only merciful, if you're only the lamb, there are no boundaries and there is no accountability. But when you step into justice and the lion, if you don't have that other balanced side, it can get very quickly pulled in the wrong direction of I'm right, you're wrong, this is your penalty, and this is what you deserve. And that's not who Christ calls us to be.
So is it kind of like seeing a compass here, and you got east and south, you got north, you know. So it's kind of like like for us, Wilmington is southeast, right? We're in that perfect spot to be both. That's just a weird picture, but I think the idea of separating these two things is not a good idea. It's just understanding how they fit together so that you can flow with what God's saying to you about it, and know, you know, there's this thing that we're just, I always get this, we're just not smart enough to know how to navigate life. We have to have the mind of Christ. Also the wisdom, the earthly kind of wisdom of Solomon, proverbial wisdom. These are two different things. So in the same sense that we've got to be able to flex and flow. We've got to stand our ground always, It's kind of like saying, it's like James Bond. We want to be stirred, but not shaken. And the Bible doesn't want us to be shaken either.
Yeah.
I mean, that's God talks about that. So the idea here is you want to be firm, joyful, gentle, and rock solid in what you believe. Stand on the Word of God. Be moved by the Spirit. So this idea, bringing all that back around to the idea of justice and mercy. What are some examples? Do any examples come to mind, not only biblically, but in our own lives?
Yeah. We got some examples we'll jump into here in the next segment. We're going to take a short break. So this is a fantastic topic for us to dive into, really unpack, and looking forward to that here in the next segment. You're listening to and watching Wake Up Our Faith. Matt Ham, Kevin Adams, Macy Cole, right here on Wilmington's Big Talk 106.7 FM. Hello and welcome to Wake Up Our Faith, the show where passion, purpose, and dreaming big challenge common sense. We like to think of it as a conversation to shed light on the upside of upside down living. Matt Ham with Kevin Adams and Macy Cole here in the second hour today. Just want to remind our friends, thanks for tuning in here, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We want you guys to get in this conversation. Let us know where you're listening from. Add your thoughts below. We'll comment, maybe even mention it on the show. And certainly share this out in your communities. Invite folks into what this is, was just a conversation. This segment, this hour, we've been talking about justice and mercy. Kevin, before we went to break, you had a bunch of good thoughts I want to tap back into.
I've forgotten them all. But fortunately, we have these guys. No, I think just to touch back on that or pull it back in, Macy is in the midst of teaching a class right now and walking through some of these things. So the idea of justice and mercy is a pickup from last week, and just to throw that out there, it has a feel to it. So we're trying to kind of bring the idea down to earth gradually throughout the show, and talk about how that actually looks in everyday life, and being able to navigate that with not necessarily a balancing act, but more of a kind of southeast flow. In other words, when you see the homeless guy on the corner, sometimes you're supposed to help them, and other times you may want to really bad, but God has something else for you to do with the coin in your pocket, so to speak. So that said, there's a flex and a flow. We talked about masculine and feminine and what that looks like spiritually. We're not talking about our flesh and gender. We're talking about spiritual, masculine and feminine, and that's really important. So anyway, let's talk about some examples of what justice and mercy look like in our everyday life. That's sort of what I was aiming for.
It looks like to me my children. That's all I can think about right now, man. It's because there's some days I want to drop the hammer of Thor on these little boys, and just for being crazy. And I'm like, what are you doing? I'm going to just drop the justice hammer, But then you're like, oh man, this grace to let you know that, I love you. There's mercy. So I'm all ears on this one, because I tend to navigate towards that sun hammer of Thor justice too often.
This one is such a hard one to unpack, because it goes against anything that our flesh could ever teach us or want to do. So when we talk about stepping into justice and mercy, this is no more striving to be good. This is not, I should feel this way, I should be this person, I should do it like this because the Bible says. It is applying what the Bible says and getting really honest with our true nature, which is to cast justice and the lion anytime someone steps upon our ego of how we perceive what is right or wrong. So we have to get a grip on being led by the Spirit, which is the husband. We have to get a grip on realizing that we each have a soul, which I would consider to be the wife. So the soul submits to the Spirit, and then through that submission, they create their child, which is ego. And we touched on this last time. So in order to be rightfully just, we must strip ourselves of our own wants and our own will. And this is not easy, because to get to this space is submitting to the Spirit, and the Spirit is going to ask us to do things that are against our will, because we have to learn to not be that way anymore. Like when Jacob wrestled with God, and God was basically saying, you can't be a deceiver anymore. You have to carry this limp as a reminder that you can't stand on your own 2 feet.
Right. That's right. Well, it's interesting. You say we have to let go of the will, and that's absolutely something we are teaching together, all of us. And I think it's the hardest thing to do in life, is to let go of your own will. But our great King, Savior, Redeemer, Lion of Judah, Jesus, did that. Now, so he's this to us, and we don't have to be that. We don't have to be the Redeemer. We don't have to pay. We don't have to hang on a tree for somebody else. He's looking for mercy, not sacrifice. So that's my caveat but he is also our model. And he's not our model of a man. He's our model of a person. And we're parts of that. So as the model, what he does is he said, I came not to do my Father's will, my own will, but my Father's will. So he's showing us right there. And then in the garden, his own will was not the same as the Father's for a moment. And who knows, throughout his life. That wasn't wrong. It was just truthful, because he was all man, all human, and all God. So Jesus let go of his own will in the garden when he said, Father, I don't really want to do this. This is a big thing. and I'm messing the scripture up a little bit, but that's what he said. Nevertheless, take this cup if it's possible. And he said, nevertheless, your will be done. Talking to the Father, not mine. Wow. So he separated that. So we've got, that is a first step, and it is humongous, not easy.
I think one of the things that I hear and feel in this is there is absolute freedom and peace on the back end of this. Why this matters is that this is the pathway to peace and absolute joy and rest. And so we can't lose sight of the vision, of the goal, of why it's important to navigate these things, because this is that pathway. Right. It's just a natural step, you know? It's like if you want to get to whatever, if you're a cake person, you got to go through the icing or whatever, you know, you got to get to the center of the donut.
You trade God's dream for you in your life. God's the how. You trade His dream. You trade your will for His dream. And so if you can let go of your own will, which is self-preservation, it's you know, you need it in your life, but it doesn't need to lead your life. And that's what you're talking about, being led by the Spirit. And that's what the Scripture says, is that those who are led by the Spirit, these are the sons, i.e. sons and daughters, children of God. That's the sign that you're His, is you're led by the Spirit. Now there's a sanctification process that takes place throughout our life, and that helps us learn that process so we get in the mode of it. Doesn't mean we're always there, right? But going back to what does it look like every day, and I just threw out the homeless guy scenario, but what does it look like? I mean, a yoga studio, you know, just every day for you, you'd been in the insurance business, now we're doing this, so, I mean, we encounter this stuff all the time. It's not some big pie in the sky thing.
Sure. I don't remember specifically. I mean, I don't want to cut you off. You jump in whenever. Just you talk about the insurance business. I mean, you would have moments when people would, I mean, get in your ear, you know, and they would have had created an expectation, you know, and they'd get on you. And so you're having to play customer service guy plus bring in truth. And there's this balance that goes on there because you want to say like, hey, you know what I mean? Like, and there are moments when, I mean, I had somebody literally curse at me one time. You know, in a derogatory way, I mean, in a demeaning way. And you stand up and you say, listen, my Father doesn't speak to me that way. You're not going to speak to me that way. Let's reset this. I'm here to help you. I want to help you. But I cannot help you when you're on fire and you're disrespecting me, you know? And so, I mean, that's just one thing that jumps out to me. So, and Macy, what do you see?
So, it's so powerful what you said when Matt said, my own Father doesn't speak to me that way. Because we have people in this world, a lot of people in this world whose father does, whose fleshly father. And so the first thing that we have to get to is, now that we are children of God, our heavenly Father speaks to us in a very loving way. And so in that instance, Matt is Matt. Matt is who he is, and he is not going to be disrespected that way because that's not the way that he values being treated, and he shouldn't. And so he's helping someone else understand how he's not going to be treated, and taking it one step further to not treat them that way and actually cutting it off before he treats them in a way that is not in line with his values. But when we properly step into justice and mercy, in that scenario, which is a perfect example, and it happens all the time, and guys, I can teach this. I am not the master at this by any means, but these are just the teachings. We immediately hear the suffering of another person through the raise of their voice and the way that they are projecting that suffering onto us through their words. And we see them as a child of God, an innocent child of God crying for help. And we immediately become their balm. And we say, we take a step back and we say, I'm hurt right now. This is not okay. And we say, okay, but they're not okay. And we immediately turn the other cheek, which I'll talk about in the next segment. And we say, listen, you are my brother. And even though you're frustrated right now, we're in this together. Yeah. So let me help you through this in a way where we can both speak kindly and lovingly.
Yeah. That is, it's good. Go back, rewind, pause, re-listen. That's good stuff. Make sure you guys are getting this on the podcast. Wake Up Our Faith on iTunes. Would love for you to subscribe. Leave us a review, a comment. Make sure you're catching us streaming. And also to jump in with us every single weekday morning for Wake Up My Faith, the Portable Faith Community. You can find out more during the break at wakeupmyfaith.com. We'll be back for more right after this. Hello and welcome to Wake Up Our Faith, or welcome back to Wake Up Our Faith, the show where passion, purpose, and dreaming big challenge common sense, and where my headpiece falls out of my ear. But we are all about the upside of upside down living, like Kevin's glasses here. B. Arthur in the house, the Golden Girls. I guess, you would be B. I'd be Blanche. Or Rose. Which one was it? I don't know. Macy. She'd be the sweet grandma. Ma. What's her lady's name? Oh, grandma. Anyway, sorry. Just,
I think the oldest one was really mean.
No, she wasn't. She was very, she just delivered. So, guys, appreciate you jumping on here, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Having a conversation today. Macy joins us in the second hour of the show every week, and talking today about justice and mercy. And before we left, there was a really powerful conversation going on about how to talk to people, how to step into conversations with the maturity of seeing their struggle and stronghold and where they're coming from, instead of just being these two balls of fire that just, go back and forth. So anyway, you guys expound. That's just my...
Well, I think Macy's got some stuff on her heart that needs to be shared. Before we jump into that pool, just to revisit the idea that this isn't a polar balancing act. I don't believe grace and truth need to be balanced. I don't believe justice and mercy need to be balanced. In some ways, because God, He will share with you which direction to go in that moment. And that's having the mind of Christ, being able to know what to do in the moment. So you don't have to stress, and you kind of hinted at this, we don't have to turn it into a formula, because it's just not. We need to lay it all down and yield, and He will do it for us. He does the heavy lifting. So I just wanted to put a can around that statement that it's kind of like knowing, letting go of the will. It's kind of like knowing what we're learning to do is we're going to do not what we have a right to do, but just doing what's right. Those are not always the same thing, right? So let go of what we have a right to do. And this is Jesus, right? This is what He's teaching us. But always do what's right. And so you can feel the difference there, So anyway.
If anybody had a right to be offended, it was Jesus.
Exactly.
And He wasn't offended.
Right.
So in a culture that automatically gets offended at everything,
yes,
we have to pause,
yes,
and say, whoa,
yeah,
where does this idea that I deserve justice even come from?
Right.
What gives me the right to be offended,
yeah,
instead of doing, I'm not taking your words, I'm just saying, like, that's
yeah,
good.
So you want to walk away with things you can hold on to and go, wow, okay, I get the big picture, but I can understand that, I can feel that, I can walk away with it. So that was all. It's just another way to look at that, not balancing things, but applying it as it's needed. So
I think that breaking this down takes a lot of different steps. So when we look at what Kevin was talking about when Christ was in the garden right before He was going to have to bear the sins of the entire existence of life, and He asked, may this cup not pass through me. In my understanding of it, it wasn't that the burden was going to be so big, please don't make me do this. It was like, I cannot bear a moment outside of your grace, Father. He did not want to be separated from his Father in the same way that Moses, between seeing the promised land and getting to spend eternity with God, God was his promised land. So when we get to a place where God calls us into something like being beheaded, let's just say for Paul or something like that, and for us modern day the equivalent would be turning down our job where we're making $500,000 a year. I think in this society people would look at that very similarly to a beheading, probably. Only when we are willing to submit to the Father and say, my greatest fear is not what I will lose in the flesh, but what I would lose in my relationship with you. So when we are filled with the Spirit and we go out into the world, and the only way to do this is to start your day with the Spirit. We have to wake up and remember, today I am given breath in my lungs because God has an eternal purpose for me, and something is going to happen where I get to live out my spiritual gifts, or they're going to be sharpened. And so when we wake up in the Spirit, we automatically step into holding the cross and talking about how everyone's looking for a reason to be offended, which Tony Robbins does an awesome segment on that. We've got to stop looking for ways to be offended and start looking for ways to take on the burden of those who are offended. We know something that a lot of people don't, which is that we are children of God, and we have studied the Word enough to know how we're meant to behave. So instead of looking at the way that people should be or should treat, we need to look at the way, how can I be that support for them? How can they taste and experience something new that I now have the secret to, that is rich enough for them to say, how are you this way? What's different about you? And that's that scent that's spoken about in the Bible. We want to be intriguing enough for people to say, I don't know what you're doing, but give me some of that, and get to that point.
That's right. And it's funny because it ties into things we've texted out from our faith community this week, and that is, the idea that you don't need to shy away from your faith. You need to be excellent, and people will see the character of God through you. So you just said that in a different way, same idea. The other thing is overcoming fear by counting the cost of what you may lose and being honest about it if you proceed, and then taking the next step, which is counting the cost of what you absolutely will lose if you don't proceed. And being able to weigh that against each other, you always come back to the eternal value over the temporary value. And when you can clear the air and go back to that place, then it's not a matter of trying to figure out what is the right thing to do or what is justice and what is mercy. It's being a conduit, and God just works right through you, and it works. And we don't have to figure it out. When we get into these weird polar places like that pendulum idea, that's when we have failure, catastrophic failure on one end, and then we overcompensate and have it on the other. And we stay in that, and being offended, what you're talking about, it's huge. Our whole culture's offended by everything. So Jesus took up no offenses. We need to not be afraid to offend people if we're speaking from truth. That's sort of that justice idea. But we don't need to be offended by anyone because he lives in us. So.
I have this, and we've talked about this, part of the thing that I feel like I have in me is this Peter-like nature.
You're Peter.
Absolutely. And I was preparing for the sermon this past weekend, and I was down at the beach. I always go, or not the beach, but the water, and I was just there praying, and I saw a guy fishing, and immediately Peter just came to mind. I was like, man, I wonder what it was like for Peter to be there, and Jesus literally come up and say, follow me, and I will make you into something new. And you see Peter laying down his nets. And one of the things is, I think too often we focus on, oh man, go Peter. Look at him. He laid down his nets. But the real joy and glory in that was God to make him into something new and continue the work. And the polarity thing with this pendulum, you see Peter cutting off a man's ear and denying Christ within a few hours. And man, do I get lost in that space.
Yeah.
Some days it's like, oh, I want to chop off an ear of justice.
Right.
To cowarding away and denying Christ. And so I'm just bringing another picture into this of how we're talking about it, where we see it in Scripture, and our tendency, my tendency, to bounce between the two polar ends instead of just being, whew.
Yeah. Well, there is a process, and I think a lot of times we just look at it, Scripture real quick, and we say, oh, Jesus just met him, and he picked up, he said, come with me. That's not the way it happened. Peter was introduced by his brother. Peter knew Jesus already. When Jesus said, come with me, that was later. There's a process. There's a sanctification process here. And I think, especially where you're coming from in your teaching is, this is seeing the whole, so you can know step by step by step how to extrapolate this out, and so that people can get a hold of it. So that's a great example, of what this normal dude went through, and how you relate to him. And you are him. You're a fisherman. But let's keep coming back to what you're bringing into this today, in this idea of there's justice and mercy. We're living this out like it's a mode, and you know what to do in the moment, and then carry that out through scriptural examples. I think that was what you were saying.
So the biggest thing about it is step by step. And the first step is figuring out who Christ is and who Christ was in the example of how he related to people. Because he related to people, and so we get to see what that looks like on a Christ-like level. And so maybe the first step is recognizing how we are not supposed to treat one another. And so it does start as in right or wrong. Right now, I really want to give this person a piece of my mind, and justice and law say they deserve it, right? But grace tells us that we actually don't deserve eternal salvation. And once we know that, then what really is deserved? So once we start to realize the depths and magnitude of what we deserve, which is actually death and eternal, damnation away from God, we really can't tell other people what they do or don't deserve. So the first step is saying, okay, when people are this way, we start to treat them with love by taking a step back and sometimes just not saying anything and feeling really fired up and then letting steam blow off.
Yeah. Great thoughts. We're going to pick it up in the last segment. Wake Up Our Faith. Matt Ham, Kevin Adams, Macy Cole. We'll be back right after this. Hello and welcome to Wake Up Our Faith, the show where passion, purpose, and dreaming big challenge common sense. We like to think of it as a conversation to shed light on the upside of upside-down living. My name is Matt Ham. With me every week is Kevin Adams. We're the co-founders of Uprint, a faith and personal development organization here in Wilmington, helping people bridge the gap between Sundays and wake up to live the life. Whatever, man. Oh, man. We appreciate you guys jumping in, tuning in, sharing this out. We're joined by Macy Cole, our good friend here, airing every Sunday on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7 FM, and coming to you live every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. in the Standard Glass Studios right here in Howell Creek Landing. So we've been talking about justice and mercy today and navigating these two tensions and exchanging kind of our will for God's will. I mean, there's been so much here, just a power-packed, hour of truth. And we want to kind of bring it in, this last segment, close it up, and go from there. So you two feel free to pitch on in.
One thing I wanted to just toss in the mix here, the idea that if you operate in love, which you talked about earlier, it's so cliched. Not you, but people say that and they throw it around, and you get this kind of Hollywood version of love. And love is such a big thing. It's the greatest thing, and it never ends. Faith, but it has to be built on a foundation of faith. So in that, the cool thing that's hitting me right now in this idea of justice and mercy is that love is truly indefensible. Unless you're a nut. I mean, typically, when you operate in love, you diffuse everything. And that's what Jesus did so well. And whether it was, dealing with arrogance or dealing with, humility. But he met people where they are. But I keep seeing this dovetail of operating by letting go of the will and following this fuel of love. And you mentioned, the insurance company being able to deal with somebody and flip it over by seeing past it and then operating in love. You could love them through their immaturity to the point of they turn it around. Think about that. That's just interesting.
Well, it's powerful how we engage with people. And if we just come off of that visceral response, that soulish place, that emotional thing, as I was telling Macy during the break, is like, man, gosh knows, I struggle with this. I'm a passionate dude. And it goes back to that Peter thing, Sure. If I'm not careful, I'm chopping off ears. And I'm like, oh, God, Jesus, I need you to put the ear back on. I'm so sorry, I need
Put it back on.
Put the ear back on. Seriously, put the ear back on.
Well, when you operate in love and you take that pause for a minute, even if they're freaking out over there, what happens is you just show them Jesus. Even the thief needs to see Jesus, right? So what happens is you see it in human nature. When you love somebody, even though they're being a jerk to you, eventually, and again, unless they're a nut, right? There's nuts. They will say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. I didn't really mean that." Now take that and really think about it and press on that next time you feel offended. Stop, pause, remember to use love as your fuel, and watch and see if that whole thing doesn't diffuse. And you gave that example, and I know you do this. And so anyway, I didn't want to sidetrack our conversation, but that was something I feel like God put on my heart, that love is indefensible. So
it's so powerful to talk about diffusing things, because when we take on that role, we are constantly seeking for people to recognize their worth. And a lot of times people forget what their worth is, and so their hearts begin to distance, and then that's where the shouting comes in. Because when I'm angry, and I read the story, it's called Why We Shout in Anger. If you don't know this story, go look it up. It's so powerful. And in the story, they say that yelling matches start because our hearts start to distance, and to cover that great distance, we have to yell in order to be heard. And so what we have to realize is, and Kevin just pointed on this, when we are in a moment where we get offended, our flesh gets pelted. And we all know that feeling of like, ooh, like that one hurt. We recognize in our human nature, okay, right now I am affected. But love is not offended, and it is slow to anger, and it is gentle and calm and kind. And so we take that on with our flesh, and then we say, dear Lord, extract that. How can I diffuse this? And then we stay calm and don't let our hearts move. And even no matter how far their hearts get, you're basically glued to them. In the same way that we can run as far as we want from God, He's not going anywhere. And He's always going to be tapping on our door. And so the way that this looks like in daily life, because it's all good to say we love one another when someone's yelling at you, be kind. These are great theories. I mean, hearing it's like, oh yeah, that's right. But what happens when I leave and I've got to get somewhere in 5 minutes and someone cuts me off, and then I get a red light, and then I get a call that someone can't show up for class tonight, and then I got to hurry and get a sub, and all of in life happens, right? And the enemy says, oh, you can talk about this, well, now let's apply it.
Yeah.
The only way to get through that is to pause. Peter, when he was cutting off the ear, he did not pause. At the table, when he said to Christ, I love you and I will show you my love, and Christ just looks at him and says, by the time the rooster crows, you will have denied me 3 times. And so we talked about this last week, but there's response. God lives in that, or there's stimulus, then God lives in that middle zone, and then there's response. So we've got to be willing to pause and say, right now my flesh is boiling. I'm in the middle of the summer, my AC is not turning on, and everything that I could literally deal with right now is going wrong. I am overwhelmed. And when I'm overwhelmed, I just want to scream and cut someone's ear off. I want to be Peter, right? But what we have to do is dial back and say the flesh is afflicted. This is frustrating. This doesn't feel good. This is uncomfortable. But I don't have to live there because I am not bound by flesh. I am actually led by spirit. So we take a deep breath and we just take a moment to reconsider and say, right now, what am I in charge of? And the first answer to that question is being a child of God. That is always the first answer. And then the second answer is, how can I diffuse? How can I diffuse myself? Maybe someone's calling and you just don't need to answer that call. And then you can call them back literally 5 minutes later. If you got 14,000 different things coming at you and only 5 minutes to handle them all, you just figure out what is the most pressing and how can I calmly approach it to diffuse anything that's perpetuated. Because if we handle this in a way where we are not looking to diffuse, we're creating a bigger problem that we will have to deal with maybe tomorrow or the next day or some other day in our life where we are not prepared to handle it.
Sweep it under the rug.
Yeah.
Well, you don't take if you got a marathon to run, you don't take a shortcut, go left. But pause is huge, and that's something we've been talking about for a good while, and just something my wife and I learned over a decade of just having to. I mean, here's the thing. Your own will can become a wilderness. If you don't learn how to pause, God will teach you how to pause by making you pause. Kind of like you're that kid with a rubber sword, swinging it at him, and he just puts his hand on your forehead until you wear yourself out, and learn how to pause that way. So that's a really important point, that when we feel the electric or the lightning bolt of offense, we stop and we let the peace of God, we let the chiropractic adjustment happen. Led by spirit, then soul, then what comes out of your body is from God, your hands, not some soulish part of you, like the will or what have you. So anyway,
there's a real power that we have in Christ to pause and yield. If we're willing to pause. And it's almost like, people talk about this as like objectively being able to like see your life and see your emotions. It's like you get a second seat in your own self. And if you can step back from it and pause, it's almost like you can see the anger like swimming across the screen. Yeah. It's like the shark. And it's just like dum, 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 dum. And you're like, I'm not going to give into it. Yeah. I'm not. I'm going to pause for a second and let the shark swim by.
Its power falls apart when you don't give into it. It has no power over you.
Yeah,
it's great. I mean, the most powerful thing is to pause, because then you let God back in. And listen, people would, if you say, is God vulnerable? People would say no, but He is. He made Himself vulnerable to rejection by us. So anyway, I know we're getting short on time. I want to make sure we.
Macy, you want to close any thoughts here? Seriously, we got so much stuff here today.
Is this the last segment?
Yeah, this last segment, we got like 30 seconds for wrapping up.
Okay, well, I guess for next week, we'll tune in to talk about how justice is eye for an eye and mercy is turning the other cheek, and unpacking the thoughts behind that, and all that power lies in those sentences.
Yeah, awesome. A lot of good stuff, guys. We so appreciate you tuning in. Look forward to having you back next week to dive into this. Right here, every Wednesday, 1 to 3 p.m., Wake Up Our Faith, streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Matt Ham and Kevin Adams in the first hour. Macy Cole joins us in the second hour. Guys, this is so cool, so much fun, and I so appreciate you guys pouring in your time and your heart into these folks to help awaken them to who God is and who He's called them to be. I want to encourage you guys before we go away, wakeupmyfaith.com. Dive into the Portable Faith community with us. Be woken up each morning, and let's change the world. You guys have a great day.